All right. Everyone sees that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so usually when I give these slideshows, I do kind of a like chronological, where I started, how my art developed talk. But I just gave one of those talks, and it is available on my YouTube channel through San Jose State University. If you just look at Kate White, San Jose State University, it's a really thorough talk with all that kind of background. And what I wanted to do for this, since this is kind of supposed to be an opening, is just talk about the work in the show. So that's what I'm going to do. And Daisha, you gave such a good history of me. I probably don't need to say anymore. Right. So I'm just going to talk about some of the paintings in the show, how I conceived of them, and a little bit of how I actually make them. This one is, I don't have the exact dimensions. It's big. It's like quite a bit taller than me. It's called Weeze in a Cell, AKA Struggle on the Rise. And the AKA, also known as, is Weeze's title, Struggle on the Rise. So the story behind this painting, and this actually isn't the final version that's in the show. The one in the show I worked on a little bit, so it's a little bit improved. But this painting came about through my relationship with Weeze, who I met. He was locked up in prison in Louisiana, serving a 40-year sentence. He'd already been in prison. He was convicted at age 18 or 19 in just racist railroading, Louisiana style. And he'd already served like 16, 18 years, something like that. And I met him through my friend JR, who was a Bay Area guy who was pen paling with Weeze and sharing Weeze's writing online and with the youth to connect Weeze with kids. So Weeze was able to have his life have some purpose and meaning while locked up in prison, and share his amazing transformation that he managed to go through while in prison as a young man growing older, imagining spending his whole life locked up, 40 years without parole. So I met Weeze through JR, and convinced me to start illustrating Weeze's writing for this project they were doing called Beyond This Prison. So I have a little booklet that I made. They have a website, Beyond This Prison, and so here's just a few examples of the illustrations I was doing, reading Weeze's writing, getting to know him through his writing. And then we went and visited him in Louisiana for Christmas tree in the background, presents under the tree, nothing in those boxes. And we meeting, this was, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago or something like that now, met him, immediately clicked, knew that we would have to help him get out. Sorry, this is a very long story for this painting, but it's a good story. And so then once I met him in person, realized, okay, we've got to look into whatever we can do to help him. Found a lawyer. The lawyer said for $2,400, she'd look into it, did a GoFundMe, hit up, my friend group and my network, got together $2,400. And on $2,400, she managed to get him released. That's how unjust his sentence was, that took $2,400 to get him released. So instead of serving another 20 years in prison, he was released and moved out to the Bay Area, where he is now and doing well, and made this painting shortly before he was to be released. And like a lot of my paintings, I conceive of them like through conversations with people, like, hey, you should paint this, or what if you did this? And he and I were talking about how he used to sit on the top bunk and put his hand on the ceiling and imagine being free. And so I painted him in this cell freedom near at hand, and with the layers of the building kind of transparent. And at this, during this time where I was making this painting, I was making a lot of paintings with the idea of the layers of time, history being visible in the painting, as in like the cross sections, like at the bottom of this painting. So you see, you know, the foundation of the building, the groundwater, down to the bones of the ancestors, down to the core of the earth, the lava at the core of the earth. And, you know, like the beginning of time coming into the power at the beginning of time, at the core of the earth, coming into the present moment through the grate at the bottom of his jail cell. So that's kind of what was going on in my mind when I made this painting. Also, I will say his paint, this is what painters do. I could not get his face right. I was trying, I couldn't pull it together. And so I ended up using the logo from the Black Panthers party, the Panther logo for his eyes and for the hand, like the claw over the edge of the bed. So that is Weeze in a cell. He's no longer in a cell. Okay, here is another, here's another form of constriction. This is a famous painting. People probably recognize Grant Wood's American Gothic. And a lot of the time I will make like my version of a classic painting or a painting from history to kind of subvert the original meaning of the painting or play off of the theme established in the painting. So this, here's this couple. Note the Gothic window in the background. And here is my version of this painting. And this is called American Hippie Gothic. And this is a portrait. A lot of my paintings are portraits of people I know. And this is Sharon and Moonlight. Some of my oldest friends, you know, they were like 60s commune people, super politically active and all through their lives, and living in now beautiful Mendocino Coast, where I'm actually now living on their land. And so I wanted to make a painting about another version of a white American couple, and representing peace and power there. So, here's how I start paintings, just giving you a little glimpse into paintings in their initial stages. Do a bunch of background stuff, and then start laying on the layers of the figuration and the subject matter. And then often I will use source material by taking photographs, staged photographs of things I want to paint, and then Photoshop them onto the painting that I've already begun, take a picture of the painting I've already begun to kind of map out how things are going to go. It would probably be easier to like make a sketch and have it figured out like that. But for some reason, I think I'm going to like not have to work so hard if I just start the painting, and I end up having to do all this extra stuff to compose as I go. Okay, here's another painting. Okay, or this is not a painting. On the left is a snapshot of my friend Rory up on the same land I'm talking about, enjoying the outdoor shower. And I like sneaked this snapshot out the window, and I was struck by the gesture of his hand on his chest, this kind of like classic gesture of grace. And it reminded me of paintings I've seen of like this one, like El Greco Annunciation painting, Christ ascending. And so I wanted to make, I wanted to kind of highlight that mood of peace and grace. And so I made this one called Country Life that kind of, I don't know, feels evocative of some like fantasy Eden, Garden of Eden or something, like before the fall or after the fall. And note the Gothic arch and the stump in the background. So it's still kind of related to the same place. This painting also in the show, and sizes of these, they're quite large. It's hard to really feel them at this size, but you know, they're in the like 4 to 7 foot range for the most part. This is called, what is this one called? Oh yes, Reckoning. And this was kind of, this is a theme I have in a lot of my work, kind of playing with undermining kind of ideals of power, glory, empire, the American West, not by like fighting them with equal power, but kind of just by undermining them with play and teasing. So here's sort of an American West reckoning. And here's some close-ups. I have good close-ups of this painting that I thought I would show, because not being able to see work in person, this is something you miss, is what's going on the surface. So that's the horse stable in the background. And there's a close-up of the sad cowboy. There it is. Let's see. Okay. This is another famous painting that I made my version of, which I'll show you in a minute. But this is Velasquez's Surrender of Breda, which depicts, this is another like glory painting. It depicts this Spanish army has conquered a Dutch town of Breda. And so this is like a victory painting of the mayor or whatever he is, surrendering the keys to the city. And here's my version titled Keys to the City. And this is me as the leader of the losing army, surrendering the keys to the winners, who are really just a bunch of balloon heads. And the losing army consists of all the people, real life people, who have been supportive, contributing, involved in the conversation around my art. So my idea, my feeling for this painting was I wanted to show I wanted to kind of subvert the idea of power over and represent the power of interconnectedness. So I'll show you some details. This is a really big painting with a lot of density. So I'll show you a few details of this. Here's me surrendering the keys on my CVS keychain. You know, to make it contemporary. There's the big one again. Okay, here's Rory again, who has been a major player in my art, the creation of my art, showing the cat Sunny, who's in a lot of my paintings. The newspaper, Dacia, the article, An Outsider No Longer. This is the article represented in this painting. Yeah, KY, Outsider No Longer. And a picture of Rory counting his money, a painting of Rory counting his money in this newspaper. So that's in the painting, Keys to the City. So here's a collection of people from like art people, like art critics, art writers, to people totally on the margins of the whole art conversation. I mean, on the margins of culture, and everyone in between contributing to this conversation, which has expanded and enriched it for me in a way that has been incredibly valuable and feeds back into my art. More people. Oh, there's Brian Carl. Brian Carl's here, I think. I'm trying to see if there's anybody who's here tonight who's in these. There could be. Yarrow. Melissa. Hey, Melissa. Okay. So there's that one, Keys to the City. Here is a self-portrait. This one is a mashup. I wanted to do see what would happen if I do a mashup of these two paintings. The one on the left is another Velasquez. This is Las Meninas, another famous painting that's been like talked about and theorized about a lot. It's about a lot of things, painting, power, representation, femininity, the gaze. And then the one on the right is a self-portrait by Alice Neal, who was in most of her life a pretty outsider type of artist, painting mainly portraits of people she knew. And so this is her self-portrait. So I wanted to combine, that's also about painting and power and femininity. And so you see the canvas on the left. This was always what struck me about this painting, on the Velasquez painting, the large canvas back, you see the back side of the canvas on the left. And so that's kind of what I pulled from that. And then the pose, and obviously the nakedness. And so this became my painting about painting and power and the gazes and all of that. Okay, so this one, another one in the show, is called Birthday Girls. And this was inspired by this snapshot that I saw my friend had of her kid's birthday party. And what I was struck by was the unself-consciousness of the girls in their bathing suits, and the cake and the large ominous knife laying there next to the uncut cake. And I had the sense of the horrors, the dangers that young girls face in the years to come. So here is that. I copied the faces of the girls, except for the middle one, from art historical paintings that showed faces underlit, like usually gazing at the baby Jesus or something. And so I copied those mainly just for some source material and to, connect the story of girls across time. The one on so check out the figure on the far right holding up her hand. That one is taken from this painting, which is done by Artemisia Gentileschi, and it's Judith and her maid servant with the head of Holofernes. And this depicts a Bible story about revenge for a rape. So, and see the knife in the woman's hand, like held down. Oops. So you see, for super art history nerds, there's a little treat there. Okay, this is Culdesac Girl. I'm showing you this one to show you the portal. See the little black hole under her foot? I was from this body of work, I was using these little black holes, like these cosmic portals, thinking of them as trauma holes, and these trauma holes as portals into greater consciousness. Here's another trauma hole portal. And again, young girls, I whenever I see young girls, I'm always like, ugh, what's in store for you? And so that's kind of what I was thinking with this one. I was also thinking at this time about returns. And the title of my show here to Returnity ties in with this, but the need to return to the past, to reclaim pieces of ourselves that were lost, that were buried, that were rejected, denied, and culturally to have to return to the past to acknowledge wrongs that were done that haven't yet been acknowledged, in order for us to have a full presence in the present, and with which we can have a meaningful path forward. So this cul-de-sac was also had the idea of the return, or like even a dead end that we have to keep returning to until we get what it is that we are meant to learn. So her spinning around, her dress, all of these symbols and images and concepts were, even the sprinklers going around were part of this painting. And then here, talking about the personal returns, this is from my life. This is my dad when he was younger, portrait of my dad, and an imagined, kind of partially imagined landscape from my youth where I grew up. And my sister and me in the background here fighting over a bear, teddy bear, with one of these trauma holes. And mirroring the starry sky to suggest that it's not just an empty void in there, but the passage to wholeness. Having to return to the past, that is. And okay, what's next? Okay, so this is one of the most recent paintings in the show, another pretty big one. I don't know, maybe like 7 feet long or something. This one is called The Problem. And this one also is about the past blending with the present. So I conceived of this painting when I saw a woman pushing her baby in a stroller down the sidewalk in front of my house, and these bros riding by in their Hummer leering at her. And this is in a neighborhood that's in the process of being gentrified. And it's these white guys leering at this woman who lives there, just trying to push her, take her baby for a walk. And she's ignoring them. And I flash on the painting of Ruby Bridges, the Norman Rockwell painting of Ruby Bridges being ushered to school during school desegregation by U.S. Marshals. So this is the painting. And I want, so this happens sometimes where I'll be like, it's not like I have a painting, like I'm going to make this painting and that will present my position on this subject. It's more like, okay, there's a vibe here between what I'm seeing and what that painting was about and what was going on back then. There's resonance. I don't need to like completely understand what it is. I just need to make this painting. And during the course of making the painting and then hearing people's responses and having conversations about it, we often start understanding how things resonate, fit together, contrast, get just a more nuanced understanding of things. So you'll see on the far left of the painting, the leg and the shoe, and on the right of the painting at the border, the fist. And so those were the things that I actually like copied directly from the Norman Rockwell painting. And something about the girl's stride and posture. And then, there's the baby fighting back, responding. So I'll show you a little bit of how this painting was a huge struggle to make. Sometimes they come together pretty easily, and sometimes it takes a lot of trial and error. So here's the first, here's kind of the beginning. Just laying it out. Here's one of the versions. You see in the upper right, I've got these weird realms. I thought I thought it would be a good idea to have like cosmic realm, city realm with psychedelic sunset. And that, I think that became just too complicated. The guy's tongue, a bit lurid. The baby, I thought was too literal, like babies don't actually do that. I wanted it to be more like a magical baby. The idea of the future generations having some other response that we can't even fully literalize. So this is again going and scanning something, bringing the a photo of the painting into Photoshop and messing with it in Photoshop before I mess it up on the canvas and try things out. So here I'm trying out the baby, messing up the baby. It's got this green line here over on the left because this leash, the line of the leash, I'm thinking I need to have another line. I'm just letting you inside the mind of what painters think about when they're making paintings. A lot of it is just like sorting out shapes and how those shapes make meaning. Upper right hand corner, you see I simplified. That was a bit much. Let's just make it all the city, which I did to bring the focus more on the figures. It contained his tongue. Actually, it looks a little more scary now, I feel like, without the cartoon tongue. Here's what I did with the baby. Managed to turn the baby into a magical baby. Also, you'll see the upper left-hand corner, I have this road kind of ending, and I decided to make it all a flat horizon line. This is again when I was thinking of the layers of the painting, like stacked, you know, and so that was kind of part of the idea of these different levels, maybe like in a video game, like levels of consciousness even. That makes no sense, I realize. Okay. Oh, here was one thing I tried in Photoshop. Good thing I didn't do that, right? I thought I needed, you know, it just wasn't quite there for me. So here I try things out in Photoshop. The black curtain became, isn't that, I mean, didn't that just do it? You can probably see like that works. It makes her stand out more. And I don't know if you noticed in the original painting, the tomato splat. So that is what this whole splat on the back is inspired by. So the painting is almost finished here, except you see she is looking at us and she looks threatened. And Ruby Bridges was staring straight ahead. And so that was the final thing, to just move that dot of her pupil forward, and it totally changes the vibe of the painting. Along with that, I also realized that in the upper right corner near the sidewalk area, it was kind of empty, and I needed a small shape up there that I wanted to be to connect with her dress, the pattern of her dress. I'm like, well, what kind? I need to put an animal, a black and white animal up there. So I put a skunk up there, and later I Google what skunks mean, like, you know, and like they're the medicine of skunks, the spirit medicine of skunks, and it's self-protection. So this is how mystical it gets making paintings. You know, if you just trying to make it look right and look complete, things present themselves that end up having the right meaning for the painting, and suggest deeper meanings for the painting through the aesthetic choices that seem to be the right ones. So that is the last, yes, that is the last slide. And we can now either do questions or do Sean's, or however you guys want to do it.
Is there?
Okay, I'm here.
Good, good. Can you hear me? Did you hear what
Yeah,
I said?
I can hear you. Yeah. Why the bag on my head in the self-portrait?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So that's a good question, because first I put the bag on my head for the self-portrait because it's embarrassing being naked in front of people. So the bag was kind of a hiding, a way to expose. So I was also kind of thinking of the idea of like exposing everything while hiding my identity, you know, like being able to be free if you're wearing a mask. But by the end of the painting, the bag came to mean something else for me, which was I'd been struggling with painting so much during that time. Just getting in my own way, doubting everything I'm doing. unable to get out of my head, really. And so the painting ended up yet, even with all that struggle, paintings continue to be made. I keep making paintings. They continue to evolve. So the bag over the head with the, hand still making paintings ended up for me being like, oh, what this painting is telling me is that it doesn't matter what my mind is, what's going on inside the bag. The painting is its own force of nature that's flowing through my body, whether I think it's going well or not, or, no matter what I think about it. So it expanded from hiding and embarrassment to basically just being free of mind.
Thank you. Another question also for you. What does the Gothic stump stands for in your painting?
The Gothic stump. Well, it was, I guess okay, good question. Wow. Okay. The Gothic arch, in the American Gothic painting stands for, the kind of like harsh Christian, the couple is very buttoned up and contained and severe, and kind of, the way that Christianity has been used, and the whole, to be, behave and you will get transcendence in heaven. And so I think having the Gothic arch in the stump is maybe, I'm kind of just thinking this right now in answering this question, but it's kind of like the earth-based religion version of that transcendence is here on earth, in our bodies, through the stump, not, some symbol in a church that you have to deprive yourself of life here in order to achieve later. So sort of like celestial, power-based religion versus like earth-based. Dacia, I can answer a question that's been asked. That's the next one that's for me, that if you want me to answer it, it's
sure. Yeah, that's the one. In your painting, you make some parts of some objects transparent look. What's your thought behind doing this?
Right. Yes. The transparency thing is something that usually every time I show art, some people ask about. It's definitely a major stylistic characteristic of my work. And it really just came from my process where I kind of have a background and I draw with line the subject, the figures that I'm drawing, and then being dissatisfied with my drawing a lot of the time, scribble out with paint and then redraw. And then I always kind of felt drawn to allowing the background scribble outs to come through and not fill in the entire figure or shape that I'm painting. And I had to it takes a while for me to understand why something aesthetically has meaning for me, like philosophical meaning. And for this, it's really actually a huge part of my work, aesthetically and philosophically, because I came to understand that it has to do with my understanding really of consciousness and reality itself, that, there's this unified oneness that exists, and through our perceptions, through our minds, through language, ideas, things get separated out, delineated. But in moments of feeling of connection, of transcending the small sense of self, the feeling of separation, you can see through the illusion of separation to the unified consciousness. I think it also evokes things like time passing, like you can see the environment a figure is in, as it was before they were there. So it also, I think, speaks a little bit to like the impermanence of everything. You can kind of see through it. Things become a bit ghost-like, even as they are coming into form.
Thank you.
So like
Kate,
that.
this is actually a question from me. I mean, I just wanted to elaborate a little bit because in your painting, most time I think nudity, you like to put yourself or some other people naked. I know definitely it's not for erotic purpose, and I wanted to elaborate to just explain to the audience what is the motive behind of that.
Yeah, I often paint myself naked in paintings, and I guess other people too. Um, well, for lots of reasons, but one is, clothing is sort of a cultural signifier of a time, of a place, of a social group, and so who we are without those markers is closer maybe to our essential humanity, without the barriers. Also, nakedness, signifies openness, vulnerability, availability to life, unguardedness, unmaskedness. So those are all there. I'm also aware of the power of the symbol of the female nude. I mean, that has been being represented through history for all kinds of reasons, from, the beginning with like the elevation of, fertility goddesses, that being power, to, later becoming like objects of the male gaze. So I think throwing that in there just evokes all of those associations to what the female form means, has meant, might mean now, and also representing myself not in just doing natural things, that don't actually require you being naked and would probably be inappropriate, and not in poses. um Maybe starts, I don't know, maybe there's this idea that it can like neutralize the significance of the female body to not be either idealized or degraded, but just human.
Thank you.